Testing 1, 2. All right. Hi, guys. Donnie Rouse here, and this one I'm titling 2020. So, 2020, if you've heard that term before, likely it's going to remind you of your vision. And the point of this episode here, or this rant I'm about to go on, is for you to acknowledge how far you've come in going to attain your goals. It's very easy to fall in the habit of focusing too much on the outcome while not enjoying the journey. If I'm honest with you, this has been kind of a challenge for me in the last few months, maybe even longer than that, because I've been so focused on making some shifts in my life, and that I feel like I've been forcing, not enjoying the entire process of it. So let's look at your life. Like, what is a goal that you have been aiming towards, where you feel like sometimes, that torch is lit, but all of a sudden the torch is dimmed or has gone out, and maybe you feel like you're lost, like you're not really sure which way forward. Like, think of that goal. And then next, let's look back at everything that's happened over the past 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, year, 3 years plus. What actions have you taken, and where have you made progress? And the last part is just highlighting, so acknowledging where exactly you have made the progress. Because it's when you're in the thick of it, it's very difficult to see any progress being made. But when you actually take a step back and look at it and say, okay, well, where I am today, like, how has this shaped where I'm going? And maybe it's very much, it's the possibility that maybe you've been going down the wrong path, in which case it is still very good to look back and say, okay, well, what can I learn from this, what's happened? The reason for this post today is I had some of that reflection on my own life, because over the last few months have felt like a whirlwind, because there's a lot of major change happening in my life. And part of that is my own doing, because I used to say, like, I may not be able to do everything, but at least I can try. And I'm slowly realizing that the power of focus is, not just focus on what it is that you want, but focus on 3 things max, because otherwise you start to water down your efforts. I've tried to resist this one for a very long time. But as a result, I felt like I wasn't making any progress. I felt like I was stuck. But when I did this process of looking back over even just the last couple months of my life, I realized that I was actually making some major strides. And while I keep looking and I want the end result to be here, I was taking steps in that, and I was holding that vision. And I'll give you the examples of it. So the first thing was my coffee business. My roasted coffee, it had been a goal of mine to let go of the roasting process. Now, this had been extremely difficult for me, because I'm like, well, who is going to do it the way I want to do it, right? I mean, every roast, there's just so many variables to control, and I wasn't willing to give up control, I should say, or the process, because I'm like, well, no one's going to do it. No one's going to pay that attention that I do to it. When I moved roasteries, I moved to a roaster now that has the capability to profile and literally read recipes, meaning I create a recipe curve, or I manually roast. It records the process that I'm doing, and then it will replicate that. But the problem was that when I was doing this, none of the replicated roast ever came out like the first roast, like the manual roast. And as a result, it left me like, I'm just like, what? I couldn't, I was racking my head, because I wasn't, while I was happy enough to put the product out there because I know it was good enough, but I know I have very, very high standards in terms of what I put out. And I wanted to match so bad that first roast, but often it would never match that first roast. And if I'm honest with you, I was also very reluctant to relinquish control to the computer. So, for instance, I had this computer and it would be running this recipe profile that I created. But then towards like the end of the roast, I would manually like press the button, I would manually jump in and manipulate the last part of the roast. Again, as you would imagine, like that, if I'm constantly manipulating, if I'm constantly going in and manually doing it, there's no way I could automate it. And then there was a shift. So I learned a piece of the software I was using. I got a new computer system where I could learn and practice with the software and creating the recipes that my coffee follows. And then this past week, I roasted all the coffees. The first time that I had ever done it, completely automated. And I was talking with Andrew, a friend of mine who was operating the machine. And I was, this is actually quite a big shift. He's like, well, why? I was like, because if you understand, like I'd been fighting this for the longest time. And I'd been so critical about like every single aspect of the roast that I was, the fact that I'm here and I'm relinquishing control and just trusting in the process is huge. And then he continued to question me further. And I said, well, I guess I looked at it this way. I looked at it as like not a zero sum game. That's not the right terminology I want to use. But I was saying, well, I said, what the hell do I have to lose? Like, if I know that this is this is the vision I'm looking for. In this case, my vision was to have my roast completely automated, where I can just tweak a recipe, send it, upload it, have my coffee roasted, bagged, and shipped. That was the goal. And the step I needed to do was to automate to test out all of these new recipes that I created and to automate it. So when I thought of it, I was like, listen, well, this is where I want to go. The only way I'm going to get there is to actually run the process. And I was, what? If the roast, if they were to come out horrible, like worst case scenario, I would literally dump all that coffee. All that coffee would have been somewhere the equivalent of like maybe $1,000 or something like that. But whatever, right? And if I look back at every major advancement that I had made in my business, with my beverage, and which is still an ongoing project, and the coffee, there's always been a cost. And I had to be willing to accept that cost for the sake of advancement, for the sake of learning. Thankfully, the coffee came really, really, really good. And as a result of just taking that step, the biggest satisfaction that I got out of this week was not even the fact that the coffee came good, was the fact that I let go of control and I took the next step. Now, prior to this episode here, prior to this recording right now, I wasn't acknowledging the path that I had taken. I wasn't acknowledging the journey. But when I look back, now I'm like, man, all of this stuff was like happened for a reason. Even just all the tests I had done, like it was literally building a knowledge base for me. Give you one more example. So in moving to Miami, so this November, I am going to be moving to Miami. If you're afraid of not getting your coffee, don't worry, you'll have it. I am going to be coming back. I'll have someone filling my orders for my roasted coffee as well as for my cold brew oven. And I'll be coming back once a month to make coffee purchases, to do some brewing for the cold brew oven. But this decision to do it came at a time where I was felt very like I was on unstable footing. Like this next step would require me to make a big jump. I'd been in Connecticut my entire life. And there was a desire for me not just to try living in another place, but to have the ability to live in multiple places, meaning like if I want to live in Asia, if I want to go different places, like have the ability to spend blocks of time in different areas. And so what I saw in my mind of the next step was, was moving to Miami, close enough where I could still manage and get everything kind of in order with regard to my business, but also it was just kind of like it was safe enough to step over and say, okay, well, let me see how this feels. Get away. I'm like 2.5 hours away from home. I could always fly back if something is needed, but let's see how it feels. And then from there, then, going forward, I could start moving in other places. So it was just another step. And again, as a result of reflection, I was looking back because, well, this is in a way, this is me building the foundation for that castle in the sky, right? The castle is any goal you have. And in order to get that and achieve that goal, you got to build the structure underneath that will support it. And that's all the work. That's like putting in your time. So I realized that this step, while I'm like, well, man, I still don't have, I'm still not living in in the places I want to. Like, I still don't get the opportunity to. I'm not living in Turkey for 3 months or Italy because I have these very, very strong desires to live multiple places in the world. But it's not my reality currently. But realizing that this is a step in that direction actually made me acknowledge the courageous action that I've had to take to get to this point. So and then combine that with with the coffee roasting. These are all steps to building the foundation for my castle. And I'll go back to that castle analogy because I think it's one of the most powerful metaphors that I've heard in, I don't know, probably right now. It's like one of the most powerful metaphors I've ever heard because it's on top of mind. And the top of mind is build your castles in the sky, meaning dream big. Like go after, not the small goal, which that you could attain, but go after that, like that 10x goal, the one that is going to light you up. And when you have that castle, hold it in the sky. And the only work you have to do right now is to build the foundation to support it. And that is all the work you have to do today. So in the example of my coffee business and being able to travel the world, live in different places in the world while, do my, my one life blueprint and run my coffee business. What is required of that? Right? Those are the steps that are being taken right now. Like the shipping of my coffee, the roasting of it, that's complete. Well, pretty much completed. There are a couple of things on the technology side I got to figure out and set up, but that's done. That's a step. Taking that move to Miami to start to feel what it feels like is a step. And so I'm on this journey building this foundation to the life that I want to live. But isn't so true? So often we forget about those castles here, and then we bring it down to reality, and you plant your castle back on earth because it just seems maybe it's too big. Or maybe you're looking at the past and all the reasons why it didn't work. And you're like, oh, it didn't work in the past. It's not going to work now. If this is where you are, I want to encourage you to put it back in the sky, to see that vision of yourself that's living the life that you want to live. 3 years out, if that's too soon, go 10 years out. Whatever time period or whatever amount of time that is going to expand and stretch your mind to be able to see something as being possible. And when you're there, just envelop yourself in the feelings of it. And then bring it back to current day and say, well, what do I have to do now? What are the requirements what are the sacrifices I'm going to have to make? And start taking these small steps in order to do and go after the very thing that you want. Life is precious. Life is beautiful. Life is a blessing. It's all of these things. And when you're reminded of just how finite your time is, you realize that it's not really about the destination anyways, but who you're becoming. I'll give you one last story. I met up with a friend yesterday, and she gave me this calendar. And this calendar is literally, it's like a page of dots. And the dots represent 88 years. So 88 years in weeks, meaning so after every week that passes, you color in a dot. So essentially, it's like you're by from where you are until you're dead. I'm like, well, I don't I don't like the idea of coloring that because, well, one, because psychologically, when you're looking at that and it's like 88 years, I don't like the idea of maybe even planting that seed. Well, 88 is over, right? Because you're literally watching time elapse until like the end of this calendar. But I also see the benefit of it because it is a constant reminder that not a single day is guaranteed and that every single one of us, all of our time, will come to an end at some point. And to just make sure you're doing things that make you feel good, make sure that you are doing things that bring enjoyment, make sure you are acting in alignment with your values and the things you want. That is all I've got today. I hope this in some way just helps you look back at your own path and realize that, you know what, while you may not be making the progress that you want in the time that you want, but just trusting that you are on the path and where you are right now is where you are meant to be. And while it may suck, right? Maybe you're in the thick of it and you're like, fuck, I don't even, I don't see how I could take that next step. Just trust and have faith. Because you are being sculpted into who you need to become. The trials that you are encountering right now are what is setting you up for the person you are meant to become, right? Because you have to abolish these old paradigms, these belief systems, these ways of thinking in order to move forward. So just allow the process to happen. Again, this is me speaking from my life because, as you know, like the journey never stops, right? We are always on a journey, different level, different devil, right? No one's ever made it because there's always another level. So I hope that lets you, brings you some comfort, but also the realization that you are on your own journey. Hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, just please give it a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it. If you have any questions, feel free to send them to me via my website at www.donnyrouse.com, DonnyRaus.com. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Remember, you only get one life. Live fully, live passionately, and most of all, live now. God bless, and I will see you again soon.